Okay. I shall probably go through this presentation fairly swiftly because I think that in order to explore what IBM has demonstrated here, I think there's probably a lot of interesting dialogue that needs to go on. But this is my view of self-service, and it's effectively it's been done. It's been created independently from IBM's view, so it's not exactly the same, but I think there's a lot of commonality. So I've got no real axe to grind in terms of what IBM's presenting here, but the way that I look at self-service is that it was regarded in 1950s, the introduction of self-service into retail, as a complete revolution. Nobody had actually thought to do this, or nobody had thought to do it in, let's say, a general way. And it has the following effect. A lot of effort is actually outsourced to the customer, which is useful because that means you don't have to do that effort yourself. And from the retailer, that cuts costs. The customers didn't mind at all because from one way or another, they would actually end up getting served faster. So by dividing the labour between the customer and the retailer, the customer was actually happier and concluded they were receiving a better service. And because of that, this idea is taken off again and again and again. It's like if somebody wants something, then they have an input into how they get it. Will probably be more efficient. And pretty much all of the successful websites have been driven by the whole of a kind of self-service dynamic. So we've seen it repeated in the electronic sphere. In terms of BI categories, I mean, we use this analysis and we use it repeatedly again and again. Self-service BI makes obvious sense. You are with BI providing information to a user, and in one way or another, they clearly can have input into what information they want and how they want to see it. But I'm just here pointing out there is the hindsight regular reporting stuff. There's the oversight, which we think in terms of dashboards, but also drill downs like OLAP. We will put BPM in that category. Data mining, statistical analysis, and all of that stuff is much more complex in terms of what you may wish to do and how you may wish to do it. So an architecture that gives you, let's say, a full insight self-service capability is a rather large thing, and I don't think that's what IBM is talking about here. And IBM has a lot of technology in that space, but I don't think this is something Cognos is talking about. And foresight is predictive analytics. And the point being made here is that there's a level of sophistication, and there are different types of BI, so there's a spectrum of things you might want to provide. Then there's this little problem. The reason that you're providing self-service capabilities to deliver productivity, well, there's productivity in what I would call task productivity, which is I need to do something, and maybe you're on the phone with a customer and you need to take a look at some data, and maybe that's as simple as just going into some customer application, or maybe it's a little bit more complicated and you drag in some kind of BI capability to do that. And if you actually look at most jobs that are strongly automated, you actually quickly discover that actually there's a whole series of tasks that are automated, and the task productivity isn't the whole story. There's the individual productivity of being able, for the individual to be able to link these things together effectively. So all I'm really pointing out there is that there's two dimensions here. And that's really saying that the level of self-service and its usefulness is not actually that simple. In the best of circumstances, users still probably can't self-design the way their whole job works. You're normally constrained by technology in some way or other, and then the context that you're in constrains you, which I think is on the next slide, so I'd better go to it. If we just look in a very general sense at this whole idea of self-service BI, first of all, you have a user interface. That's complex, as IBM's pointed out. That may be a mobile interface, maybe be on your iPhone. It may be a desktop. It may be a desktop with a huge screen where you can have 3 or 4 windows floating around, all of which are fairly large. It may be a fairly constrained desktop, as on a laptop. There's just a whole series of the amount of space you might have available to demonstrate anything. And then the user interface itself, for instance. I use Apple Computer. Apple Computer scripting capability is very good. In other words, whatever any given application is providing you with, you can normally, if you want to link things together, you can kind of script it. But a lot of users don't have that capability, and if they did have that capability, they probably wouldn't know how to use it. So there's that user interface layer, and then you've got the various pieces of software which might be presented to you in, I think, what IBM's calling here unified workspace. Or they might be distinct, depending on what you've got. Or if you're mixing one thing with another, then it would have to be separate windows. So there's a complexity there in the number of things that you want to see at once. And then there's all the complexity of connectivity, because, of course, there may be many different data sources you would like to go to. And in theory, the user would like to be able to have complete command of all of this, and providing complete command of all of this, of course, is not really realistic at all.